In 1999, a small town was torn apart by a disappearance that made national headlines. A 3-year-old girl vanished from her daycare center in broad daylight. No forced entry, no struggle, no witnesses. She was just gone. For months, her face was plastered on milk cartons, the news, and every street corner. But then 5 months later, a dock worker stumbled upon a sealed black box inside a rusted shipping container at a remote yard on the edge of town. What was inside that box changed everything. This is a story of secrets, betrayal, and cold calculated evil. Just pure human horror. The day was March 17th, 1999, Stockton, California, during a quiet Wednesday morning. The day started like any other at Little Steps Daycare. Parents pulled up in minivans, trading half smiles and tired nods as they dropped off their kids before heading to work. Inside, toddlers laughed, colored, and watched cartoons under the watchful eye of 3 staff members. 3-year-old Mariah Denton had on a sunflower dress and white sneakers. Her mother, Julia Denton, kissed her on the forehead at exactly 7:48 a.m., whispered, "Be good, baby," and walked out without a second thought. But by 10:26 a.m., when a staff member did a head count after snack time, Mariah was gone. Panic didn't set in immediately. At first, they assumed she'd wandered off to the bathroom or was napping in one of the quiet corners. But after a full sweep of the building and outdoor playground, something felt wrong. The director of the daycare, Anita Morrow, called 911 at 10:38 a.m. Her voice was trembling. "She's not here," she told dispatch. "The gates are locked. The doors are closed. One of our kids is missing." By noon, the place was swarming with cops. Detective Marcus Vance, a 42-year-old lead investigator with the Stockton PD, stepped onto the scene with his jaw clenched. He'd worked abduction cases before, but this one was already different. No broken locks, no signs of forced entry, no witnesses. The building was in a quiet suburban neighborhood. Nothing out of place, except for the fact that a toddler had seemingly vanished into thin air. Vance interviewed the staff one by one. Anita Morrow claimed she'd been checking attendance every 30 minutes. 2 junior staff members, Natalie Cruz and Jared Ross, were in charge of snacks and playtime supervision. "Was there anyone unusual here today?" "A parent, a delivery guy," Vance asked. Natalie frowned. "No, unless you count the guy from facilities." "What guy?" She hesitated. "Said he was checking smoke detectors. Had a clipboard, wore a brown uniform. I let him in the back hall." "When?" "Maybe an hour before we noticed Mariah was gone. That was it. No security cameras. No ID logs, just a man in a brown uniform with a clipboard." Vance's gut dropped. 3 hours later, Julia Denton sat at her kitchen table, sobbing into her hands. Her husband, Derek, tried to remain strong, but his voice broke with every phone call he made. News spread fast. Reporters camped outside their home. Helicopters hovered overhead. The entire city felt like it was holding its breath. The description of the man went out to the public. White male, 30s to 40s, about 6 feet tall, clean-shaven, wearing a brown work uniform, and possibly posing as a fire safety inspector. Hundreds of tips poured in, all dead ends. A week passed, then 2. Police canvassed every registered vehicle near the daycare. They investigated staff backgrounds, including the 2 junior workers. Jared Ross raised flags due to a 1993 arrest for petty theft, but nothing linked him to the disappearance. By the 3rd week, Vance's team was in overdrive. He and his partner, Detective Layla Morgan, hit abandoned warehouses, storage facilities, even local construction sites. Anywhere a child could be hidden, they searched. Then a lead, a man named Billy Shore, came forward. He worked at a local print shop and said a guy matching the description came in around March 10th, asking custom ID badges and clipboard forms, official looking with fire safety logos. Billy remembered him clearly because he had a nervous energy, kept checking over his shoulder. They pulled the shop's receipt log, customer name, Dale Watson. Fake, of course, but the surveillance camera from the back hallway captured the man's face. It wasn't a crystal clear image, but good enough for a composite sketch. It was released to the public the next morning. On April 12th, nearly a month after Mariah went missing, Detective Vance got a call from a man named Carl Townsend, who managed a commercial truck stop south of Stockton. "I've seen that guy before," Carl said. He's been around here, drives a green Ford Econoline van, no plates on the front. The detectives raced to the truck stop and pulled footage. At 4:06 a.m. on March 16th, the day before the abduction, the man in the sketch fueled up the van and parked near the back lot. He left 30 minutes later, heading west. The van had been spray-painted on the sides. No company logos, no stickers. It was clean, too clean. "I want every green Econoline in this county checked," Vance barked. But there was no trace of the van. No credit card trails, nothing to work with. Then came the phone call. April 20th, 1999, 9:42 p.m. Anonymous. "I know where the van is," the voice said. Male, calm, flat. "Where?" Click. No number traceable. But an hour later, a call came into dispatch from a security guard at an abandoned rail yard 20 miles west of the city. "There's a van out here," he said. "It's been parked near one of the old containers. Creepy as hell. I didn't touch it." Detective Vance and his team rolled out. The rail yard was pitch black, littered with rusted train cars, dead weeds, and silence. They found the van, abandoned, unlocked. Inside, duct tape, empty juice boxes, a stained blanket, and a child's pink hair clip. Layla found it under the front passenger seat, Mariah's. DNA confirmed it 2 days later. Still no Mariah. The van was wiped clean of prints. Whoever had taken her was organized. Careful, possibly a professional. Then, just as quickly as the lead had come in, everything stopped. No more tips. No more sightings. Weeks turned into months, until August. A shipping container, freshly delivered to a private yard near the docks, began to reek. The property owner called it in, thinking it might be spoiled goods. Inside the container was a black box, bolted shut, industrial grade. When they opened it, everything changed. Before we continue, let us know in the comments where you are watching from today and what time you are currently watching this video. If you enjoy stories like this, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more. The sun was beginning to drop behind the dusty cranes when Officer Henry Caldwell arrived at Dock 46. The container had been dropped off by a private hauling company that morning. By afternoon, the workers noticed the smell. Caldwell gagged the moment the black box was opened. The thick stench of decay and bleach poured out like poison. Inside, beneath layers of plastic wrap and rags, was what remained of 3-year-old Mariah Denton. The discovery shook the entire city. Her name trended on every news station. Her photo, those wide brown eyes and tiny dimples, was everywhere again. Detective Marcus Vance stood over the coroner's report that night with his jaw locked and eyes glassy. Mariah had been kept alive for a short time. Forensic evidence showed she'd been fed, bathed, and even sedated, possibly to keep her quiet. The real horror, she had likely been dead for only a week. That meant someone had been moving her, keeping her hidden, watching everything unfold. The container itself gave no clues. The black box inside was sealed tight, steel reinforced with a custom lock mechanism. No prints, no markings, no origin. Whoever had done this had money, patience, and a clear plan. Vance and his partner Layla Morgan began dissecting every delivery and container transaction from the past 2 months. The container came from a private lot in San Leandro. They traced it back to a shell company, Pacific Sun Imports, registered under a name that didn't exist. Inside the company's listed office, bare walls, a dusty desk, and a disconnected phone. "This is organized," Layla muttered, "like cartel or mercenary level planning." Vance didn't respond. He was stuck on something smaller. The hair clip. The pink hair clip found in the van hadn't just been Mariah's. It had been part of a set, a birthday gift from her aunt, only sold at a local boutique store. They revisited the store. The owner, an older woman with a sharp memory, remembered a man buying the same clip set 2 weeks before the abduction. Said he was polite but strange. Asked odd questions like, "Do most little girls like these?" And would a 3-year-old know the difference between this and the cheaper kind? Creepy, he paid in cash, drove away in a green van. But the woman noticed something else. "A tattoo," she said, on his left hand. A black spade, big, like a playing card. That detail changed everything. They ran the tattoo through a national gang registry. It wasn't a common marking. But one match hit, a guy named Darren Clay, ex-military, dishonorably discharged, suspected in 2 abduction cases in Nevada in the early 90s. Never charged. He'd vanished in 1995. No job history, no driver's license renewals, no credit activity. But he had a brother, Ethan Clay, who owned a towing company 2 counties away. They moved fast. August 27th, 6:13 a.m. Tactical units surrounded Clay Brothers Towing just outside of Modesto. It was a quiet lot surrounded by chain-link fence and rusted trucks. Ethan Clay stepped out in boxers, hands up, cigarette still dangling from his lips. They tore through the place. No sign of Darren, but in the office safe they found 2 IDs, both fake, both with Darren's picture under different names. In a locked drawer, a camera with a roll of undeveloped film. Layla drove it straight to the lab. What came out was a punch to the gut. The photos showed Mariah, alive, laying on a mattress in a bare room, eating from a tray, crying, her arms curled around a stuffed animal. And in the background of one photo, barely visible through the open doorway, was a calendar. It showed July 1999. She was alive just weeks ago. Vance stared at the photos in silence. His hands trembled. They now had evidence of confinement, proof that Darren was alive, and that he'd been keeping her in a new location no one had found. They pushed Ethan hard. He refused to speak, lawyered up immediately, but Vance knew something Ethan didn't. They had a bug in the office. That night, as the precinct buzzed, audio came through. Ethan had been released. He returned to his trailer and made a phone call. "I think they know. They were asking about the container," he whispered. There was a pause. Then a voice replied, "Move everything. Go dark, I'll handle the rest." It was Darren. They tracked the call to a burner phone. Tower pings placed it near the docks, less than a mile from where Mariah's body was found. He was still close. Vance got authorization for a citywide sweep, warehouses, storage facilities, shipyards. They combed every corner near the water. On September 2nd, they found something. An old fish processing plant, abandoned for years, had fresh tire marks behind it. And inside, a trapdoor covered with plywood and rusted barrels. Guns drawn, Vance and Layla led the entry team. The door opened into a basement. Musty, damp, full of mildew and crates. There was an old mattress, ropes, empty juice boxes, and stuffed animals. Blood on the floor. Vance called the lab. "We need to test this now." Layla opened one of the crates. Inside, syringes, sedatives, bottled water, a half-eaten peanut butter sandwich. He'd been here. By midnight, they had DNA confirmation. It was Mariah's blood on the floor, likely from a nosebleed or injury. But she'd been here. Recently, they pulled street cam footage from every route within 5 miles. Nothing. Whoever this man was, he knew how to avoid cameras, how to disappear, but he had one weakness, his brother. Vance played a dangerous move. He had Ethan arrested again, this time on charges related to false identification and obstruction of justice. Enough to hold him. Then he made a deal. "No prison time, no press. You tell us where your brother is." Ethan cracked. "He's hiding in an old quarry shack north of Sacramento. But he's not alone," he warned. "He's got others working with him. Gun runners, people you don't want to meet." They didn't wait. September 4th, 3:52 a.m. SWAT moved on the quarry. Drones hovered overhead. Snipers took position. It wasn't just a shack. It was a fortress, spotlights, motion sensors, 2 armed men on the roof. Gunfire erupted the moment they closed in. Bullets tore through steel siding. Officers ducked behind rocks and tires. Vance crouched low, holding his rifle, eyes trained on the second-floor window. More shots, then a scream. By the time the dust cleared, 2 suspects were dead. One captured, but Darren nowhere to be seen. Gone again, but this time they had blood. A trail leading into the woods. September 4th, 1999, 6:18 a.m. Just north of Sacramento. The sun hadn't fully risen when the dogs caught the scent. The woods were thick, filled with thorns, low branches, and uneven ground. Officers moved fast but carefully, their boots crunching over wet leaves and mud. The trail of blood led them down into a dry creek bed, past a broken fence, and into an overgrown junkyard full of rusted trailers and scrap metal. Detective Marcus Vance moved with his weapon drawn, sweat running down the back of his neck. Every few steps he'd signal for the team to stop and listen. Birds, insects, nothing else. No voices, no footsteps. He didn't believe Darren Clay was the kind of man who'd go down quietly. "Stop!" one of the officers called out. Over there by the red container. A foot. sticking out from behind a pile of tires. Everyone rushed in. It wasn't Darren. It was one of his men, a Hispanic male in his early 30s, shot once in the chest, dead at the scene. He was still holding a pistol. Vance scanned the surroundings. He was covering Darren's escape, he muttered. They kept moving. 10 minutes later, they found a footprint in the mud, fresh, deep, and heading north. A single boot print dragging slightly, as if the man had been injured. "We've got blood, right boot limping," Vance said into his radio. "He's bleeding out. He won't make it far." By 8 a.m., the trail led them to a rundown hunting cabin nestled at the edge of the forest. The front door was cracked open. The curtain moved. "Stack up," Vance ordered. The team lined up outside the door. "Go, go, go," they stormed inside. Empty. The place had been used recently, food wrappers, cigarette butts, a radio playing static. But Darren was gone. There was one clue, a map nailed to the wall. Circled in red ink was a location, Crescent Hills storage, nearly 90 miles away. "He's planning something," Layla said. "Or he's got more stashed there." Vance wasted no time. They flew down the highway with 2 unmarked units, sirens off. Lights off, full silence. Crescent Hills storage sat on the edge of a dying industrial town. Half the units were abandoned. The other half hadn't seen activity in years. At 10:36 a.m., Vance and Layla pulled up to the office. The manager on duty was a skinny teenager named Kevin, who looked like he'd rather be sleeping. "Have you seen this man?" Layla asked, showing Darren's composite sketch. Kevin leaned over the counter. "Yeah, he was here 2 days ago. Rented Unit 84, paid 6 months cash. Did he leave anything?" "Didn't say. Just locked it up and left in a black SUV." They pried open Unit 84 with bolt cutters. Inside, weapons, rifles, handguns, ammunition, explosives, all wrapped in cloth and stored in plastic crates. Vance froze when he saw a notepad sitting on top of a crate. One page torn halfway with handwriting. "Buy time. Don't trust Route 88. Move girl before Tuesday. She's worth too much." Vance's blood ran cold. "Another girl?" Layla whispered. "We need every patrol within 100 miles searching for any recent abductions," Vance said. Now, the database lit up. A 5-year-old girl named Elise Harmon had been reported missing 3 days ago from Reno, Nevada. Same MO taken from Daycare. No witnesses, no trace. It was Darren. He hadn't stopped. He was still hunting. At 2:12 p.m., while the team reviewed the security tapes from Crescent Hills, a black SUV was spotted circling a gas station just outside the storage area. No plates. Vance radioed in. "We've got a possible sighting. 2 units move in, both exits." The SUV took off the second the officers approached. A high-speed chase followed down side streets, across gravel roads, past warehouses. The suspect weaved between parked cars, trying to shake pursuit. Vance floored the gas pedal, gripping the wheel. The tires screeched. Dust flew up around them. "Layla, window!" She leaned out and fired a warning shot at the tires. Missed. The SUV swung hard and crashed into a fence near an empty lot. Doors opened. 2 men jumped out. One fired back. Gunfire echoed across the lot. One officer hit the ground, grazed in the shoulder. Vance dove behind a trash bin and returned fire. One suspect dropped instantly. The other ran behind an old loading truck. More gunfire, screams, then silence. Darren wasn't one of them. They were just more runners, people paid to move supplies or create distractions. But in the back seat of the SUV, they found something chilling. A box of girls' clothing. Pajamas, shoes, a pink backpack. None of it belonged to Mariah. None of it had Elise's name either. Another child. Layla closed her eyes. He's running a ring. He's not working alone. Back at the precinct, they dug into Darren's military records. He had training in counter-surveillance, disguises, escape, and evasion. But what stood out was a brief section under Special Projects. A unit called Saber 8, disbanded, record sealed. "We need to know who else was in that unit," Vance said. They made a formal request to the Pentagon. Denied. Vance didn't care. He had another option, a retired Army colonel who owed him a favor. September 5th, 7:02 p.m. Colonel James Stafford met Vance in a diner on the edge of town. Quiet booth, no name spoken aloud. Saber 8 was trained to disappear. Their job was extraction and insertion in hostile territory. One of them could walk into a foreign embassy, kidnap a diplomat, and vanish without a trace, Stafford said. Who else was in the unit? Stafford slid a folded paper across the table. 5 names, all discharged, all with criminal histories since. They're connected. You're not chasing one man. You're chasing a network, he warned. The paper led Vance and Layla to a new location, a farmhouse deep in the Sierra Nevada foothills. The name on the lease matched one of the Sabre 8 names. They prepped for a raid September 6th, 4:44 a.m. The team approached the farmhouse under cover of darkness. Night vision goggles on, silencers loaded. Vance took the lead. Inside they found more weapons, maps, and video equipment. One room had soundproof walls, chains on the floor, but again Darren was gone. He was always one step ahead, but this time they found something he didn't expect to leave behind. In a locked drawer inside a desk, Layla found a Polaroid. Elise Harmon, still alive, sitting in a room with cement walls next to a red door. In the corner, the tip of a black boot was visible, resting on the floor. Darren, they were close, so close. Before we continue, let us know in the comments where you are watching from today and what time you are currently watching this video. If you enjoy stories like this, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more. September 6th, 1999, 5:12 a.m., Sierra Nevada foothills. The sun was just beginning to rise when Vance stepped out of the farmhouse, Polaroid in hand. He stared at the image of Elise Harmon, alive, afraid, and sitting beside a red metal door. It wasn't just a photo, it was a message. "He wants us to see this," Vance muttered. "He's playing with us." Layla glanced over his shoulder. Red door, cement walls, that could be anywhere. Vance shook his head. "Not anywhere. That floor, there's paint flakes and dust. Looks like a bunker, maybe a fallout shelter." That style was big in the 60s. They scanned the farmhouse property for signs of underground space, but the ground was solid. No hatches, no old wells, nothing. Then Layla noticed something strange. A wooden trail sign half buried under dirt near the edge of the forest. She brushed the soil away. "Redstone Military Trail, 1962, Vance's eyes narrowed. Let's find out what the military left behind." Hours later, they pulled up military archive maps of the Redstone area. One small structure stood out, Facility Act 29B, an old Cold War storage bunker sealed after the Vietnam War. It was a mile into the hills and marked as inactive. They drove up a winding dirt road until the tires could go no farther than hiked. Vance moved fast, rifle ready. His boots crunched over fallen branches. The forest was thick, silent. After 20 minutes, they found it. A concrete door buried into a hill. Metal hinges rusted. A vent pipe sticking out above, covered in moss. It looked forgotten. But the padlock on the steel door? "Jacket," Vance said. A crowbar and a short burst from bolt cutters popped the lock. The door creaked open. The air was foul, damp, moldy, and laced with something metallic. They stepped inside. Flashlights swept over old concrete walls. A hallway led into a chamber lined with storage racks, broken furniture, and cables strung along the ceiling. Then they heard it, a faint sound, coughing, from behind a door marked with red spray paint. "Elise," Layla called. No answer. Vance kicked the door open. The room was empty, just a single chair. A chain bolted to the floor, but someone had been there recently. The food tray was still warm. The cup was tipped, orange juice pooling on the ground. On the wall, scratched into the paint, were the words, "She's not here. Try harder." Darren had been watching them. Somehow, he knew they'd come. Back outside, Vance walked in circles, hands on his hips, thinking hard. "Why the game?" he said aloud. "Why take Elise and then bait us with photos?" Layla looked at the trees. He's stalling. For what? Whatever he's planning next. That night, back at the precinct, Vance laid everything out. Photos, maps, the Polaroid, the handwriting on the wall. Layla went over the latest forensic reports. The prints on the juice cup, not Darren's. Another man, possibly the same accomplice who was in the SUV 2 days earlier. They ran it through the database. The match came back. Miles Detrow, ex-military, same Sabre 8 unit. He'd been off-grid for 10 years. Until now. September 7th, 9:02 a.m. a tip came in from a woman who ran a roadside diner east of Sacramento. She remembered 2 men, one matching Darren's photo, the other shorter and stockier. They came in around midnight, ordered breakfast, and left in a black pickup. The tip was gold. They traced the black pickup through security footage from the gas station next door. One camera caught the license plate. It led to a rental company in Reno, rented under the name Joseph Lang, another fake ID linked to Darren's previous aliases. They were headed north. By evening, Vance and Layla were driving through northern Nevada, following the GPS ping from the pickup. It had just crossed into the outskirts of Carson City and was parked near an abandoned meat processing plant. "Why here?" Layla whispered as they stepped out of the car, weapons drawn. The place was huge rusted gates, broken windows, and the faint smell of animal fat still lingering after years of decay. They moved silently through the building. Vance signaled toward a large walk-in freezer in the back. As they got closer, they heard it again. A cough, faint but real. Layla took the lead. She slowly opened the freezer door. Inside, Elise, chained to the wall, eyes wide, tears rolling down her cheeks. She was alive. Vance rushed in, unhooked the chain, and scooped her into his arms. "It's okay," he whispered. "You're safe now." Layla turned to radio for backup when the first bullet cracked through the wall. Gunshots erupted. Vance ducked behind a metal table, shielding Elise. Layla fired toward the upper balcony where the shot came from. "Two shooters," she yelled. Vance handed Elise to a nearby officer and flanked the left wall. More shots rang out, sparks flew from the pipes. A fire alarm began to screech. The building filled with smoke from a flash grenade tossed by one of the suspects. Then silence. They moved quickly, clearing the building. One man was dead, shot through the chest. The other was gone. Darren had slipped away again. Back at the precinct, Elise was reunited with her parents. The girl was dehydrated, but otherwise unharmed. She was too shaken to speak much, but she drew a picture of the bad man. It was Darren. She pointed at his face in the photo and said just one word, "Ship." "What ship?" Layla asked gently. Elise pointed again. He said, "Ship is leaving, with more girls." Vance went cold. He rushed into the office and pulled the map of the West Coast. The docks, the containers, the black box from before. Everything came back. "He's smuggling children," he whispered, "using shipping containers overseas." They put out an immediate alert to every port authority from California to Washington. Then came the final piece. A warehouse outside of Oakland received a delivery that afternoon. The driver didn't have the right credentials, and the warehouse manager refused entry. The container was marked with a red spade. Vance and Layla raced to the scene. Inside the shipping yard, they found it. Container number 482, parked behind two forklifts, sealed and ready for transport. No paperwork, no shipping log. Just the same industrial-grade lock used on the black box where Mariah was found. They cut it open, empty, but in the far corner was a small bedroll. Candy wrappers, a juice box. Whoever was in there had just been moved. Again, they were too late. But Vance looked up and saw something strange on the inside wall of the container. A message scratched with a key. Stockton wasn't the start. She wasn't the last. September 8, 1999, Oakland, California, 3:26 a.m. The shipping container sat wide open. Detective Marcus Vance stood inside, scanning every inch of the cold steel walls. The message etched into the corner, "Stockton wasn't the start. She wasn't the last," echoed in his mind like a warning shot. Layla stepped in behind him, flashlight in hand. "You think this was meant for us?" He nodded. "He's taunting us. Every move is calculated. Every girl is another page in his twisted story." They found tire marks outside the yard, deep impressions leading toward the back exit. Security cameras had been cut just an hour before they arrived. Darren had been there. At dawn, Vance was back at the precinct, drinking bad coffee and flipping through every unsolved child abduction file in California from the past 10 years. Layla joined him, dropping a thick folder on the table. "I found 4 cases, girls taken under similar conditions. All toddlers, all from daycare centers, all within 5 miles of ports or railways. They cross-checked the names with shipping logs, business transactions, even garbage disposal routes. One pattern emerged. A logistics company, Deltaway Freight Solutions, a mid-size cargo hauler with contracts across the state. On the surface, it looked clean. But the company's warehouse in Martinez had a locked section of inventory marked confidential cargo, which had been rerouted several times in the past 6 months. Most importantly, one of the investors listed was Langford K., a fake alias linked to Darren Clay's old banking information. September 8th, 4:12 p.m., Martinez, California Vance, Layla, and a tactical team rolled into the Deltaway warehouse in unmarked trucks. They didn't wait for paperwork or permission. They came in fast, police hands in the air. Workers dropped their tools. Forklifts screeched to a stop. A manager, confused and sweating, stumbled out of his office. "What the hell is this?" Vance shoved the photo of Darren in his face. "Seen him?" The manager blinked. "No, I swear, never." Layla cut the lock on the back section of the warehouse. Inside were 5 large shipping crates, bolted shut, no shipping labels. They forced them open one by one. Empty, except the last. Inside was a hidden compartment barely the size of a crawl space. Bloodstains on the metal floor. Scratches, a small hair tie with glitter on it. "Another holding unit," Layla muttered. "Probably prepped for the next girl." They seized everything: computers, hard drives, phones. In one email recovered that night, they found a chilling exchange. A buyer in Malaysia had been negotiating the safe transport of younger assets. The messages were vague but clear enough. A deal was being made, and the delivery window was marked for September 14th. Vance's hands tightened into fists. "We've got 6 days." Meanwhile, Homeland Security sent word that 3 more missing girl cases from Texas, Arizona, and Nevada matched Darren's method. One photo previously overlooked showed a man in the background during a school fundraiser. He wore sunglasses and a baseball cap. Vance zoomed in. It was Darren, standing near the playground, smiling. September 9th, 10:03 a.m., Livermore, California. A new tip came from a truck driver who claimed to have seen a suspicious vehicle drop off a container in a secluded lot near Livermore. The container had been left for hours before another truck hauled it away. The description matched the type used by Deltaway. The driver didn't see faces, but he remembered a strange marking, a red crown spray-painted on the back door. Vance and Layla drove out immediately. The lot was empty, surrounded by chain-link fencing and tall weeds. But near the back corner, Layla spotted burned tire marks and shattered glass. Someone had dumped evidence and tried to destroy it. They combed through the area and found part of a clipboard, half a license plate, and a broken chain with dried blood on it. But they also found a key, small bronze with a star-shaped cutout. "This doesn't belong to a container," Layla said. "Looks more like a building key." Back at the station, Vance had an idea. There was an old facility downtown, a former children's hospital shut down in 1989. The grounds had been fenced off, but the building was still standing. Rumors said it had been bought for redevelopment, but sat untouched. He held up the key. What if he's been keeping them there? September 9th, 9:14 p.m., Stockton, California, St. Mary's former pediatric hospital. They arrived under the cover of night. The building loomed like a shadow, 5 stories of peeling paint, broken windows, and silence. Vance slid the key into the side entrance lock. It clicked. Inside, the halls were pitch black. Dust danced in their flashlight beams. Children's murals still lined the walls, faded images of smiling animals and rainbows. But deeper in, the air changed. It was colder. Still, they reached the 3rd floor and found a wing that had been sealed off. Layla spotted something near the doorway, fresh footprints in the dust. They followed them to a locked room. The door had a keypad. Vance reached into his coat. Earlier, they'd found a slip of paper at the warehouse, 6 numbers scribbled fast. He punched them in. The door clicked. They opened it slowly. Inside were 3 small beds, chains on the floor, bowls with half-eaten cereal, crumpled blankets, and sitting on one of the beds, a girl. She looked up, startled, maybe 6 years old. Layla dropped to her knees. "It's okay, sweetheart. We're here to help you." The girl nodded. Her eyes were sunken, but she didn't cry. She'd been through too much. She pointed to the corner. "He was here, not long ago." They searched the building from top to bottom. On the roof, they found a folding chair, cigarette butts, a pair of binoculars. "He was watching the city," Vance said, "watching us." Downstairs, the girl gave them a name. He called himself Daniel, not Darren. He was changing names again, adapting. But when Layla asked her if there were more kids, she nodded. "There's a boat. He said he's taking 2 more girls. Tonight." Vance raced back to headquarters. They had hours, maybe less. He ordered surveillance on every active dock along the bay. Every container heading overseas was stopped and searched. Nothing. Then came a call from an anonymous tip line. There's a barge, leaves at midnight. Charter ship, no record, slipped past inspection. It's anchored near Bodega Bay. September 10th, 11:07 p.m., Bodega Bay, California. Vance and Layla joined Coast Guard units on speedboats under total blackout. As they approached the ship, its lights were off. Quiet. A ghost on the water. Then came the shout from above. They're on the deck. Spotlights flicked on. Armed guards scrambled. Gunfire burst out from the stern. Go, go. Vance yelled, leading the charge up the boarding ladder. Bullets ripped across the deck. Layla ducked and fired back, taking out a guard with a shot to the leg. Chaos erupted. Men ran, some jumped overboard. In the cargo hold, they found 2 girls, alive, crying, locked in a cage. Vance dropped to his knees, his voice cracking. You're safe. You're safe now. They didn't find Darren. Again, he was gone. But this time they had his ship, his people, his buyers. They were cracking the shell, bit by bit. And Vance knew it had all started with Mariah Denton. But it was far from over. Before we continue, let us know in the comments where you are watching from today and what time you are currently watching this video. If you enjoy stories like this, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more. September 11th, 1999, 6:34 a.m., Bodega Bay, California. The ocean was quiet now. The last gunshot had long faded into the night. The ship rocked gently on the water, a shell of criminal activity that had just been ripped open. Detective Marcus Vance stood on the rusting deck, staring out toward the fog-drenched horizon. His clothes were soaked. His shoulder ached from slamming into a steel railing during the gunfight. But he couldn't stop now. Below deck, 2 girls were being treated by medics. They were scared, dehydrated, but safe. Layla sat beside them, holding their hands and whispering that everything was going to be okay. But Vance knew it wasn't over. In the ship's control room, they found ledgers, shipping schedules, and hard drives, some encrypted, others half-burned. A few names stood out: aliases, drop-off locations, payments in Bitcoin, and offshore accounts. This wasn't just a child trafficking ring. This was a business, international, sophisticated. And right at the center of it all was the man who started it with Mariah Denton's abduction, Darren Clay. He was still out there, running, planning, hiding, and something told Vance he was about to move again. September 12th, 1:05 p.m., San Francisco. Back at the field office, analysts worked around the clock. The hard drives from the ship revealed something new: video files. Dozens of them, surveillance footage. Most were inside containers, bunkers, or rooms with cement walls. Some showed girls crying. Some showed men speaking different languages. And in 2 of them, Darren appeared. Always covered, always blurred by masks or low light. But his build, his posture, his voice, it was him. One file had no sound, but it was labeled Container 487B, Black Box, 06-1499. Layla clicked play. It was short. Just 1 minute, Mariah Denton, crying, alone, sitting in a black box barely big enough for a dog kennel. Vance turned away. He couldn't watch it. He wouldn't let her memory be reduced to just another file in a sea of evil. That evening, while reviewing port activity logs, a junior analyst flagged something strange. A vessel named the Halberd had submitted an incomplete cargo manifest. It listed only industrial equipment, but satellite scans showed containers stacked 3 rows high, far more than the paperwork claimed. Its destination, Kobe, Japan, and it was scheduled to depart from Pier 94 in just 16 hours. September 13th, 3:22 a.m., San Francisco, Pier 94. Vance, Layla, and a team of armed federal agents surrounded the dock under the cover of darkness. It was quiet, too quiet. Most of the crew were asleep on board. The ship's engines were cold, no movement on the bridge. That's when Vance noticed it. A nearby container truck with its headlights off, creeping toward the loading ramp. He signaled. "Stop the truck," he shouted. The driver gunned the engine. Gunfire erupted. Vance dove behind a forklift as bullets tore through the windshield. Layla returned fire, blowing out one of the tires. The truck skidded sideways and slammed into a stack of pallets. The driver jumped out and ran until an agent tackled him to the ground. Inside the truck's trailer, they found another black box. Chained, bolted, they cut it open. Empty, except for a note taped to the wall. Too slow again, next stop, home. Vance's jaw clenched. He's going back. Back where? Layla asked. Stockton, he said. Where it all started. He's tying off loose ends. September 13th, 9:48 p.m., Stockton, California. The neighborhood hadn't changed much. Same rusting mailboxes, same overgrown lawns. Mariah Denton's old daycare was still closed, shut down 5 months ago. A wooden plank still covered the front window where it had been broken during a protest. Vance and Layla pulled up across the street and killed the engine. They sat in silence, watching. At exactly 10:14 p.m., a dark figure moved in the shadows along the fence. Tall, slow, confident, Vance's hand reached for his gun. That's him. They stepped out, staying low. The figure slipped inside the back of the daycare. Vance followed, no sound, no lights. The air inside was thick with dust and memories. Layla moved to the left, Vance to the right. Then they heard it, a floorboard creak. Freeze, Vance shouted, raising his weapon. A man turned in the dark, middle-aged, tall, wearing a black hoodie and gloves. But it wasn't Darren, it was Miles DeTrow, Darren's old unit partner. The same man who'd escaped the earlier raid. Miles smiled. I told him you'd show, he said. And then he reached into his pocket. Gunshot. Layla fired first. Miles collapsed, a pistol clattering across the floor. Blood pooled beneath him. Vance rushed forward. Where is he? Miles choked on his own breath, coughing blood. He's already gone. Where? Miles struggled to speak. You'll never stop him. This isn't just him. There are more. Everywhere. And then he stopped breathing. Outside, Vance paced the sidewalk, adrenaline still pumping. We were baited again, he growled. Darren set it up so we'd come here while he moved something bigger. Layla's phone rang, she answered. Then her eyes widened. What is it? Vance asked. That warehouse in West Sacramento. It's on fire. September 14th, 12:33 a.m., West Sacramento flames reached 30 feet into the sky. The warehouse, previously linked to Deltaway Freight, was burning fast. Firefighters fought to contain it, but half the building had already collapsed. Inside, they found more black boxes. Charred, melted, and bones, tiny, fragile remains. Too far gone for any immediate ID. Vance stared at the blaze, jaw locked tight. He's erasing evidence. They were getting closer. And Darren was getting desperate. But then a firefighter found something, a scorched envelope inside a desk drawer. Inside was a photograph, a girl, maybe 4 years old, sitting in a yellow dress. And on the back, in shaky handwriting, this one you'll never find. Vance didn't sleep that night. He sat in his office, looking through every file, every note, every map. He knew Darren had to be slipping. A man can only run so far. At 4:17 a.m., a fax came in. It was an unmarked envelope sent to the tip line. Inside was a satellite image. It showed a shipping container inside a fenced yard marked with a red spade, and coordinates. A port outside of Tacoma, Washington. September 14th, 3:36 p.m., Tacoma, Washington. The yard was surrounded by old fencing and guarded by 2 men posing as security. When Vance and Layla showed up with a federal warrant, the guards tried to run. Bad idea. They were taken down within seconds. The container matched the one from the satellite image. Number 917B, they forced it open. At first it was pitch black, then came the smell, rot, plastic, rust, and then a black box bolted shut. No windows, 1 vent pipe in the corner. Layla stepped forward, cut the latch, opened it, and what they found inside was Mariah Denton, 5 months gone, wrapped in a child's sleeping bag, curled up as if she'd fallen asleep. But she'd never wake up. Vance didn't speak. Not right away. He just stood there, staring at the girl whose face he'd seen in dreams for months. The girl who started all of this. It had ended here in silence, but the hunt? It wasn't over, not yet. September 15th, 1999, Tacoma, Washington, 7:15 p.m. The container yard was silent. Sirens faded as the forensics van rolled away with the black box holding Mariah Denton's remains. Detective Marcus Vance leaned against the hood of his car, hands on his knees, head down. The nightmare had ended for Mariah, but not for him, not for Layla, and not for the other missing girls whose faces were now forever burned into their memories. Layla stood nearby, staring out at the harbor. "We found her," she whispered. Vance didn't lift his head. 5 months late? Layla looked at him, her voice stronger now. "But we're not 5 months too late for the others. Darren is still out there, and we're going to end this." September 16th, 2:42 p.m., Seattle, Washington. The next lead came from one of the captured guards in Tacoma. Under pressure and staring down life in federal prison, he broke. He gave them a name, Ira Kovic. A fake identity Darren had used to rent a private property deep in the forests of Washington, a few miles south of the Canadian border. The location wasn't on maps, no power, no neighbors. Vance stared at the printed satellite image, a large cabin surrounded by trees. One way in, one way out. He slammed the file shut. "We move tonight." September 17th, 1:03 a.m., Mount Baker National Forest 3 SUVs crept through the trees with headlights off. Vance, Layla, and a team of 10 agents were locked in, armed and silent. They stopped a quarter-mile from the target, hiked the rest on foot. Fog rolled in through the pines. The forest felt like it was holding its breath. Then there it was, a cabin, large. Metal roof, 1 door, 2 windows. Smoke drifted from the chimney. Darren was home, Vance signaled. The team split, 2 to the left, 2 to the right, the rest stacking at the front. Then crash. A flashbang shattered the front window. "FBI, hands up," they stormed the house. Inside, empty. No Darren, but in the basement, 6 children, alive. Terrified, chained. Layla rushed to them, breaking locks, wrapping them in blankets. "It's over. You're safe now." But upstairs, Vance found something worse. A wall covered in photos, dozens of girls. Check marks, notes, dates, and in the middle, a photo of Vance. And later next. September 17th, 7:28 a.m., Bellingham, Washington phone records from the cabin linked to a burner number. That number pinged near the docks of Bellingham just hours ago. A marina, private boats, international access to Canadian waters. They moved fast. At the docks, they found the boat, the Huron Belle. The engine was still warm. Fuel tank recently filled. Vance and Layla boarded with 2 agents, sweeping every room. Nothing, no one, but hidden under the floorboards, a passport, a real one, with Darren's face, new name, fake background, clean, and a ferry ticket, 9 a.m. to Victoria, Canada. It was 8:37, 9 a.m., Bellingham Ferry Terminal. The line for the ferry was long. Families, tourists, trucks. Vance and Layla scanned every face. Agents checked IDs, ran faces through software. Then Vance spotted him. Dark cap, sunglasses, but the jawline unmistakable. Vance tapped his earpiece. Target confirmed. Row 7, blue hoodie, standing alone. They approached slowly. Layla flanked right. "Darren Clay," he turned, pulled a pistol, bang. Bang, crowd screamed. Vance dove behind a car. Glass shattered. Layla fired back, 1 shot to the leg. Darren spun, dropped, tried to crawl. Vance ran at him, tackled him to the concrete, and pinned his head to the ground. "It's over," Vance roared. Darren smirked, blood dripping from his mouth. "It's never over." September 18th, Seattle Federal Holding Facility. Darren refused to speak for hours. Then he asked for Vance. Inside the interrogation room, Darren smiled through a cracked tooth. "You think locking me up stops this?" he said. "I'm a drop in the bucket. There are others. Smarter than me, faster, richer." Vance didn't blink. "We'll find them." Darren leaned in. "Then start with the name Dominion Charter. Ask them how deep the tunnels go." Vance slammed the file closed. "See you in court." October 12th, 1999, Federal Court, San Francisco. Darren Clay stood in shackles, surrounded by marshals. His lawyer barely spoke. The judge listed 29 federal charges: kidnapping, trafficking, murder. Each one carried life. When asked if he had anything to say, Darren just looked out at the crowd, at the parents, the victims, the agents, and said, "I was just the beginning." 3 weeks later, Mariah Denton was finally laid to rest. The funeral was small. Her mother cried quietly. Her father couldn't speak. Vance and Layla stood near the back. They didn't say much. Because what could you say? 6 months later, March 2000, Washington, D.C. Thanks to the information uncovered during Darren's arrest, a full-blown task force was formed. Dozens of warehouses raided, smuggling lines shut down, children rescued. The program was called Project Mariah, named after the little girl whose case opened the door to a hidden world of evil. And Darren, He died 2 years into his life sentence, stabbed in the neck by another inmate. The guards said he never saw it coming, but the truth is, even now, some containers go unchecked. Some crates aren't opened, some doors stay closed, because monsters don't need capes. They just need silence, and Mariah Denton's silence spoke louder than anyone ever imagined. If you liked this story, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Also, in other to strengthen our community, let us know in the comments where you are watching from and what time you are currently watching this video.